It rarely happens during the conversation itself. In the moment, everything seems fine. You're smiling, listening, responding with care. You're engaged, you're present. If someone asked how you felt right then, you'd probably say you were okay. But later, after you've left, after the room has gone quiet, after your body finally slows, that's when it shows up. A heaviness settles behind the eyes. A dull pressure forms in the chest. There's a subtle but unmistakable pull toward being alone, even though nothing obvious went wrong. And that's what makes it confusing. The people were kind. The exchange was pleasant. There was no conflict, no tension, no cruelty. Everything was objectively good, which makes the exhaustion harder to explain. When this happens repeatedly, people tend to turn the question inward. Why am I like this? Why do I feel drained after something that should have been easy? Why do I need distance from people who didn't do anything wrong? The discomfort isn't dramatic or emotional. It's quiet and persistent, like a system that's been running too long in the background and is finally powering down. At first, it's easy to label it as social fatigue or overstimulation. You assume you just need rest. Sleep helps your body, but it doesn't fully resolve the sensation. Time passes, yet the heaviness lingers. What unsettles you most is the pattern. It doesn't happen with everyone. There are people you can spend hours with and leave feeling steady. There are conversations that go deep without leaving residue. So this isn't about being antisocial or overwhelmed by people in general. It's something more specific, and that's what makes it hard to talk about. How do you explain feeling depleted by someone who was warm, attentive, well-intentioned? How do you justify needing space from kindness? Most people don't try. They stay quiet about it. They keep showing up. They keep engaging. But inside, something begins to pull back. Not enough to be noticeable, just enough to protect itself. If you look closely, you'll notice that during these interactions, you're doing more than you realize. You respond quickly, you choose your words carefully, you adjust your tone almost automatically. You're not pretending and you're not being dishonest, but you are managing. You sense when the other person needs reassurance. You feel when silence might make them uncomfortable. You notice small shifts in mood or energy before they're spoken aloud. And without consciously deciding to, you respond. You mirror. You smooth. You balance. This isn't something you plan. It's instinctive. And because it's unconscious, you don't register it as effort until afterward, when your body finally has permission to relax and realizes how much it was holding. That's when the tiredness reveals itself. Not the tiredness of talking too much, but the fatigue that comes from carrying something invisible. You replay the interaction, searching for a cause. Did I say too much? Did I overextend? Did I miss a cue? Nothing stands out. There's no single moment you can point to and say, that's where it drained me. And the absence of a clear cause makes the exhaustion feel mysterious. Mystery is uncomfortable, especially when it doesn't fit the story we're taught. We're taught that good people are safe, that kindness should be energizing, that healthy connection feels light. So when it doesn't, the explanation turns inward. You wonder if you're too sensitive, too fragile, too easily overwhelmed. But that explanation doesn't hold up either, because your experience isn't consistent across all interactions. Slowly, something changes. You don't linger as long in conversations. You excuse yourself earlier. You choose solitude even when connection is available, without fully understanding why. From the outside, it may look like withdrawal or introversion. From the inside, it feels more precise than that. It feels like avoiding a sensation, not people. A quiet depletion that arrives after closeness, not conflict. This is the part few people warn you about. Sometimes what drains you most isn't negativity, it's proximity. And that raises questions that don't get answered right away. Why doesn't it feel wrong in the moment? Why does it only reveal itself afterward? Why does silence make it clear? Those questions sit with you. They start to change how you move through the world. Not dramatically, not visibly, but enough that the exhaustion begins to feel less like a flaw and more like a signal. Once you start sensing that this fatigue isn't random, that it's pointing to something deeper, you can't unfeel it. You may not have language for it yet, but your system already knows. And until you understand what that signal is asking of you, it will keep speaking in the only language it has. Quiet heaviness, delayed exhaustion, and the growing need to be alone after being perfectly fine with others. Over time, you begin to notice something important. What restores you isn't praise, reassurance, or even being deeply understood. What restores you is quiet, where nothing is required of you. No monitoring, no anticipating, no subtle calibration of tone, mood, or timing. Just presence without responsibility. That contrast starts to clarify what's really happening. And once you see it, the pattern becomes difficult to ignore. The exhaustion doesn't come from interaction itself. It comes from how you are present during it. With certain people, your attention stays largely within your own body. You listen, you respond, but you don't regulate the emotional temperature of the room. You don't track their reactions moment by moment. You don't feel responsible for how the interaction unfolds. Those conversations can be long and even intense, yet you leave them intact. With others, even kind, well-meaning people, something else activates. Your awareness turns outward. You begin tracking before anything is asked of you. You notice when silence might feel uncomfortable for them. You sense when encouragement will land better than honesty. You feel when your steadiness is stabilizing something in them, and without conscious intent, you step into that role. This is the pivot point most people miss. Nothing about this is forced. That's why it's so exhausting. It's automatic. What follows afterward isn't withdrawal. It's decompression. What looks like distance isn't disinterest. It's recalibration. And what others sometimes label as coldness is actually your system returning to baseline after being stretched outward for too long. This isn't about generosity or kindness. It's about unconscious labor, the kind no one sees, no one asks for, and no one thanks you for, because it happens beneath awareness. The only trace it leaves is fatigue. Once you recognize this, your behavior starts to change, not as a decision, but as a correction. You don't announce new boundaries. You don't explain yourself. You simply stop offering more than is required. Your responses become simpler. Your silences last longer. Your energy stops reaching outward before it's invited. At first, this can feel unsettling. You might worry that you're becoming less warm, less generous, less available. But what's actually happening is that you're no longer extending yourself preemptively. You're allowing others to meet you where you are, instead of meeting them where they might need you to be. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Empathic people don't feel drained around good people, because those people are harmful. They feel drained because goodness doesn't cancel emotional expectation. Kind people still lean. They still share. They still assume presence is abundant. And for someone whose nervous system registers everything, that assumption carries a cost. Repeated exposure teaches something quietly but decisively, that openness doesn't always nourish, that warmth can still ask too much, that care can still consume. So the system adapts, not by closing, but by narrowing. You become more selective with your energy even before you have language for it. You start choosing fewer interactions. You recover more quickly when you're alone. From the outside, it may look like detachment. From the inside, it feels like sustainability. And once you feel the difference between connection that nourishes and connection that drains, you can't unfeel it. You stop judging yourself for needing space. You stop forcing yourself to stay longer than feels right. You stop equating exhaustion with failure or moral weakness. What arrives instead isn't relief, it's clarity. You realize how often you've been carrying emotional weight that was never yours to hold. You recognize how much of your fatigue came from being subtly responsible for other people's comfort. That realization doesn't energize you, it quiets you. You become more careful with where you place your presence, more aware of what you give without noticing, more attentive to the early signs that your energy is thinning. This isn't a rejection of people, it's a recognition of limits you were never taught to honor. So when you leave a room now and the heaviness doesn't follow you, you don't celebrate. You simply register it. And when you leave another room and feel that familiar pressure return, you don't argue with it. You listen, because that sensation has been honest with you all along. Emotional intelligence at its mature level isn't about endless empathy. It's about discernment. It's about knowing when presence becomes labor. It's about understanding that connection without boundaries isn't generosity, it's depletion. If you're sitting with this now, realizing that exhaustion can come from warmth, that good intentions don't always feel good to carry, that closeness can cost more than conflict, don't rush to explain it. Let it sit. Let it inform you. Because once you understand why your energy leaves you, even in safe company, you will never enter a room the same way again. You won't become colder, you'll become more precise. And that precision won't announce itself. It will simply begin choosing for you. What changes is not how much you care, but how much you carry. And that distinction, once learned, quietly reshapes your entire life.